The Enon Mound in Clark County is shown in the picture. It is believed the Adena people constructed this mound. There had been wandering hunters in the area that would later become Springfield, Ohio, since about 13,000 BC. The earliest human settlers in the area were Native Americans, who arrived here in what is called the Paleo-Indian period. Above their remains are found the remains of the next group of Native Americans who appear in the Archaic period, about 8,000 BC. The Archaic period lasted until about 1000 BC, when the Adena people arrived in the area. The period from 1000 BC to about AD 1600 is known as the Woodland period. The Adena people remained here until about AD 500, when the Fort Ancient people moved into the area. They were here until about AD 1600. All of these groups of people left many remains in the Miami Valley, including mounds, forts, earthworks, and many artifacts, tools, and weapons. The last of the Fort Ancient people left this area a little over 400 years ago. About that time, other Native American tribes began to come into the Miami Valley. These new arrivals were driven out of the area about AD 1650 by other Native Americans, and for a while there were no tribes living here. In the picture you see Christopher Gist with George Washington crossing the Allegheny. Around 1700, French and English hunters and trappers, together with groups of Native Americans from many different tribes, roamed the area. The English and French stayed to collect furs and trade with the Native Americans. In about 1720, the French set up an outpost in the Shawnee village of Piqua, also known as Piqua, in and around what is now the George Rogers Clark Park. They wanted to trade with the Shawnee. In 1751, Christopher Gist was sent by the Ohio Land Company from Virginia to explore the area and report back. He saw a flooded stream nearly a mile wide that ran through the valley. He named the stream the Mad River. Both England and France wanted not only this area, but control of all of North America. This led to the French and Indian War, fought between 1754 and 1763. The Shawnee sided with the French because the French did not want to permanently settle in the area the way the English did. The English tended to stay and settle in the areas where they traded and took land away from the Native Americans. In the end, however, England won the war. England set up a line stopping white settlers from moving on to Shawnee lands. This line was called the Proclamation Line of 1763. It was not respected by the colonists who came and settled in the area. In the slide, you see a picture of a Shawnee warrior. During the early 1700s, the Shawnee moved into the area from the south and the east. They had sided with the French in the French and Indian War, but when England won in 1763, France had to withdraw from much of North America. The English colonists, who ignored the proclamation line, settled in Shawnee lands. The Shawnee were fierce warriors who attacked and raided white settlements to keep the settlers off the land. Shawnee warriors were some of the most feared and respected of the Native American tribes in Ohio. The Shawnee warriors pulled or shaved all the hair from their heads except for a small area of hair on top of their head, called a topknot. They also painted their faces and bodies when they were going to war. The homes of the Shawnee were log houses made with tree limbs and covered in bark. Each village had a council house, which would be used for council meetings and religious ceremonies. The men were the hunters who brought back deer, rabbits, and small game. The women would grow crops such as corn, beans, and squash and tend the fields. In the picture, you have an image of the Lord Dunmore, who was governor of Virginia. In 1774, he sent an army into the Ohio Territory to stop the Shawnee and other tribes from attacking the settlers. 1 year later, the American Revolution began, and the British gained the support of the Shawnee and some of the other tribes to fight against the settlers who were now calling themselves Americans. The American Revolution lasted until 1783. In 1780, Colonel George Rogers Clark got together an army of over 1,000 men from Kentucky and brought them up through the Ohio Territory to fight against the Shawnee and the British. On August 8, 1780, Clark led his men in an attack against the Shawnee at the village of Piqua, just west of modern-day Springfield. The Shawnee lost the battle and fled north, leaving the village. The Americans under Colonel Clark destroyed the village and all the crops. This was the largest frontier battle fought west of the Allegheny Mountains during the American Revolution. In the picture, you see George Rogers Clark later in life. Thank you for listening.